Rock, I will drag your Rudy Poo candy out here and wipe this whole damn arena with your
One reason, and one reason only, to go inside that ring, and that is to beat Stone Cold Steve Austin.
1, 2, 3 to become the World Wrestling Federation champion. Stone Cold versus The Rock. And the beauty of it is it has infinite chapters.
In the late 1990s, professional wrestling was on fire, and two men were the reason the entire industry was burning brighter than ever before. WWE was locked in a desperate high-stakes ratings war with WCW, a battle that would later be remembered as the Monday Night Wars. Survival wasn't guaranteed. Audiences were shrinking, competition was fierce, and the company needed something raw, something real, something the fans had never seen before. Out of that chaos rose a hard-drinking, foul-mouthed rebel who refused to bow to anyone, even his own boss. And standing directly across from him was a smooth-talking, ferociously charismatic powerhouse, whose words could cut as deep as any punch. One man embodied pure rebellion, the other embodied unstoppable swagger. Together, they didn't just headline shows night after night. They completely redefined what professional wrestling could be, dragging the entire industry into its most explosive era ever. This is the story of Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock, the two men who built the Attitude Era with their bare hands. Steve Austin wasn't supposed to become a superstar. By every reasonable expectation, he was supposed to disappear into obscurity. He had been fired from WCW in the coldest way imaginable, told over a fax machine that his services were no longer needed, and many believed his career was already finished. But instead of fading away, Austin arrived in WWE carrying real anger, real resentment, and a chip on his shoulder the size of Texas. Rather than hide that bitterness, he weaponized it completely, transforming himself into Stone Cold, a character built on raw honesty instead of cartoonish heroics. He didn't smile for cameras. He didn't pretend to respect authority. He didn't care if people thought he was the bad guy. When he stood in the ring and raised his middle fingers toward the heavens, fans didn't boo him. They roared with approval. Because for the first time, the so-called villain felt more honest than every hero who came before him. Stone Cold Steve Austin had unintentionally become the loudest voice for every frustrated, overworked, underappreciated fan watching at home. While Austin was busy breaking every rule WWE had ever established, a young performer named Dwayne Johnson was still searching desperately for his own identity. He debuted as Rocky Maivia, a clean-cut, third-generation underdog the company hoped fans would instantly embrace. Instead, audiences rejected him almost immediately, chanting against him, mocking his forced smile, refusing to accept a hero who felt manufactured rather than earned. Most performers would have crumbled under that kind of rejection. Dwayne Johnson did something far more dangerous. He listened to the boos and used them as fuel. He shed the Rocky Maivia persona entirely and emerged as The Rock, a character built on arrogance, charisma, and razor-sharp improvisational wit. He no longer begged for the crowd's affection. He commanded their attention through sheer force of personality, delivering promos that felt more like stand-up comedy than traditional wrestling interviews. Once he captured that spotlight, The Rock never let it slip away again. And within a short period of time, he became one of the most electrifying performers the business had ever produced. Their rivalry didn't explode overnight. It was built match by match, promo by promo, until the entire wrestling world could no longer ignore it. Their earliest confrontations came during the chaotic Survivor Series era of 1998, when WWE was testing every possible combination of its rising stars to see what truly connected with audiences. The moment Austin and The Rock shared a ring together, something clicked instantly. An unmistakable spark that producers, writers, and even the performers themselves could feel in real time. Crowds reacted differently when these two were on screen together, leaning forward instead of sitting back, sensing they were witnessing the birth of something special. WWE Creative noticed immediately and began building toward bigger, more personal confrontations between them. What started as a simple program between two rising stars slowly transformed into the centerpiece of the entire promotion. By the time their rivalry reached its peak, neither man could headline a show without the other being mentioned in the same breath. By the late 1990s, WWE found itself with two larger-than-life personalities simultaneously clawing toward the very same throne. Austin represented raw blue-collar fury, a man who fought authority because he genuinely despised being controlled. The Rock represented unstoppable magnetic charisma, a man who dominated rooms simply by opening his mouth. Fans struggled to decide who deserved louder cheers, so WWE made the obvious decision and gave them a reason to choose between the two. Every joint promo turned into a verbal chess chess match, every insult landing like a physical receipt that the other man had to answer immediately. Phrases like "know your role" collided directly with Austin 3:16, creating some of the most quoted lines in wrestling history. Two massive egos, two completely different philosophies, and one shared inevitable collision course toward greatness. The stage had been set for a rivalry that would ultimately come to define an entire generation of professional wrestling fans. This rivalry was never just about pinfalls and championship belts. It was about who truly owned WWE's future. Vince McMahon understood exactly what he had on his hands, and he deliberately fanned the flames, pitting his two biggest draws against one another again and again across years of television. Backstage, by most accounts, the two men respected each other deeply as performers and businessmen. But the moment the cameras started rolling, there was absolutely no mercy between them. Every singles match felt like a heavyweight title fight for the very soul of the wrestling business itself. Crowd noise during their face-to-face confrontations reached deafening levels rarely heard before or since, with arenas practically shaking under the weight of anticipation. Their chemistry wasn't simply entertaining television, it was historic, business-altering, industry-defining television that pulled WWE far ahead of its competition. Inside the ring, Austin and The Rock represented two completely different schools of professional wrestling, yet both proved equally devastating in their own right. Austin relied on stiff, physical, hard-hitting offense, built around stomping mud holes, throwing brutal clotheslines, and delivering the stunner out of nowhere to end matches in an instant. The Rock leaned more on theatrical timing, building matches around dramatic near falls, signature taunts, and the explosive unpredictability of the rock bottom and the people's elbow. Where Austin made audiences believe in toughness and survival, The Rock made audiences believe in spectacle and showmanship. Despite these contrasting approaches, both men shared one undeniable trait: an almost supernatural ability to read a crowd and adjust instantly to whatever energy filled the building that night. Neither ever needed a microphone to control a room, though both happened to be among the greatest talkers the business has ever produced. Their contrasting styles only made their matches feel more unpredictable, since fans never quite knew which approach would ultimately win out. Despite their fierce on-screen rivalry, Austin and The Rock occasionally found themselves on the same side, creating some of the most beloved comedic moments of the Attitude Era. Paired briefly with Mick Foley's Mankind character, The Rock became part of the legendary Rock and Sock Connection, a tag team built almost entirely on chemistry and comedic timing rather than traditional wrestling strategy. Stone Cold, never one to stay out of the spotlight, frequently inserted himself into these segments, trading insults and physical comedy that showcased a completely different side of his character. These lighter moments proved something important, that both men possessed range far beyond intensity and aggression. They could make audiences laugh just as easily as they made them stand up and scream. This versatility helped both performers transcend typical wrestling archetypes, turning them into mainstream entertainers rather than simple in-ring competitors. It was proof that the Attitude Era wasn't just about violence and rebellion. It was about genuine. Their most defining battles weren't fought on random Monday nights. They were fought on the grandest possible stage, WrestleMania itself. At WrestleMania 15, Austin defeated The Rock in a brutal, physically punishing classic to reclaim the WWE Championship in front of a roaring crowd, desperate to see him on top again. 2 years later, at WrestleMania 17, the two collided once more in what countless fans and critics still consider the single greatest match of the entire Attitude Era. This time, in a shocking twist nobody saw coming, Mr. McMahon personally interfered, helping The Rock walk away victorious and forcing Stone Cold to align with the very authority figure he had spent years rebelling against. Fans sat in stunned silence as their hero seemingly betrayed everything he once stood for. It proved undeniably that even larger-than-life legends could be broken down and rebuilt into something entirely different. By that point, their rivalry had grown far beyond simple good versus evil storytelling. By WrestleMania 19, neither man was chasing championships anymore. They were chasing something far more permanent: their legacy. This final encounter wasn't about titles or authority figures. It was purely about respect, history, and proving who truly belonged at the top of the industry. The Rock won the match that night, but Austin walked away with something arguably more valuable: a career closed out completely on his own terms, in front of a crowd that adored him until the very last bell. It would ultimately become Stone Cold's final professional match. A fitting, emotional conclusion to a story that began years earlier with a fired, forgotten performer refusing to stay silent. The Rock, meanwhile, was only just beginning a journey that would eventually carry him far beyond the wrestling ring entirely. Neither man genuinely needed the other to achieve greatness individually, but together, Across all those years, they became something neither could have created alone. Truly unforgettable. As both men's fame exploded, their influence began stretching far beyond the world of professional wrestling itself. Austin became a symbol recognized well outside wrestling circles, his catchphrases and persona, bleeding into mainstream pop culture, beer commercials, and motivational quoting decades later. The Rock's trajectory proved even more extraordinary, eventually launching a Hollywood career that would make him one of the highest-paid actors on the entire planet. Yet despite reaching unprecedented heights individually, both men always credited their rivalry with one another as the foundation that made everything afterward possible. Without their unforgettable clashes throughout the late 1990s and early 2000s, neither career trajectory would have unfolded quite the same way. Their names remain permanently linked in wrestling history, two halves of the same unforgettable era. Even decades later, mentioning one almost always brings up the other in the same conversation. In the years since their final on-screen battles, Austin and The Rock have repeatedly spoken about one another with genuine admiration rather than lingering rivalry. Interviews, podcasts, and public appearances have revealed two men who deeply respected what the other brought to their shared era, understanding that neither could have reached such heights alone. The Rock has openly credited Austin's fearless authenticity as something that pushed him to refine his own character into something equally real. Austin, in turn, has praised The Rock's unmatched ability to connect with audiences through pure charisma rather than physicality alone. Their mutual respect stands as a powerful reminder that the greatest rivalries often produce the deepest professional admiration once the dust finally settles. Fans who grew up watching them feud now get to see them reminisce together, turning old animosity into shared nostalgia. It's a rare example of two larger-than-life competitors aging into mutual legends rather than bitter rivals. The rivalry between The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin wasn't simply a memorable feud, it was the very heartbeat of an entire wrestling era. Their ongoing battles helped WWE decisively win the Monday Night Wars, permanently reshaping how sports entertainment would be presented for decades afterward. Every promo exchange, every Stone Cold Stunner, every people's elbow became permanently woven into wrestling's recorded history, replayed endlessly by new generations of fans discovering them for the first time. People who grew up watching these two men still quote their signature lines word for word, still passionately debate their matches online, and still feel that same nostalgic electricity whenever old footage surfaces. Stone Cold proved definitively that raw authenticity could be more powerful than any scripted storyline. The Rock proved just as definitively that pure charisma alone could transform a wrestling ring into a genuine global stage. And together, across one unforgettable era, they proved that two fierce rivals, given the right moment in history, possess the power to change an entire industry forever.